Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar on real-time visibility. My name is Guy Yedwab. I'm VP of Sales and Marketing for Explore Analytics, and today I'm going to walk through how Explore Analytics can really help you get a new level of visibility to management, decision makers throughout your organization in a way that really no other approach can get you. My background is, before I was at Explore Analytics, I was a consultant in the IT service management space, a lot of time with ServiceNow as well as with other IT service management solutions. And one of the things that I observed a lot was that frequently there's a sense throughout organizations of managing in the dark. And where you can tell that people are managing in the dark is when you hear things like, I'm requesting reports and it takes me days to get responses. Or managers saying, I have members of my staff, or I'm spending hours building the same reports each week in Excel. I want to build a report, but, the project required to get the report is cumbersome, it's difficult, and so it's not worth it for me to spend the time to get the data. There's a lot of tools, and yet people are still experiencing this sense of managing in the dark. And often that winds up being expressed as, we need better visibility, even if people don't know exactly what will get them better visibility. So with Explore Analytics, we want to be able to answer all of these kinds of issues and not only be able to say, hey, we can generate this report, but get it in a way that's quick and is easy so that managers really feel that they do have the visibility that they need. So when people are talking about visibility, they really mean a couple of different things. The first is that they want answers to their questions quickly. If it takes weeks to be able to connect to the relevant data, then it's not really visibility. If the data is stale and out of date, then they're not really feeling that they're getting the visibility that they need. Especially as technology has moved forward, visibility means getting your hands on the data you want at the time that you want it to be able to make a quick decision in real time. The second part of visibility is empowering every user. I think when a manager feels that they're reliant on someone to go and do a bunch of manual work to the data, or when they feel that it requires a project, with developers to get the reports that they need, it doesn't feel like visibility because they're still beholden to, large amounts of effort, whether it's manual effort or coding effort to get the information that they need. So if you want to give true visibility to your managers, you need to give them the sense that the data is real time. It's something that they can put their hands on and dig into further themselves, so that when they have a follow-up question, they can immediately get answers rather than kicking off the process again. And the third is that it needs to be able to drive improved behavior. The data needs to follow users to where they work. It needs to be something that's very interactive and very actionable, so that it's not just information, it's something that can actually can influence the world of the people who's working on it. So if your reporting processes right now aren't answering these three areas, then your managers, your decision makers, your stakeholders are still going to feel that they don't have visibility, even if you are turning around certain reports they're asking for. So Explore Analytics is really built to address that and give true visibility into those areas. The goal is that Explore Analytics is interactive reporting that any user can use. What we mean by that is it doesn't require coding or scripting. It doesn't require, knowing of SQL or knowing how to build, data models. It's really just drag and drops and drop downs so that you can put it in the hands of people who are able to understand the data and allow them to build reports themselves. Similarly, real-time as well as trended data, to be able to give true visibility, people need to be able to really see the data up to the minute, or be able to get that historical trend, and be able to do that again in a way that doesn't require huge amounts of deployment or issues like that. the idea of visibility is really allowing people to get their hands on the data at the time that they need it. And then, being able to get Explore Analytics in your environment within minutes. The vast majority of our customers in less than an hour have been able to be looking at live reports in production, so that it's not something that requires a project, not something that requires, a huge headache and a huge lift and load technically. Means that you can be getting that visibility within minutes because it's all deployed as software as a service. It's available through web, mobile, and tablet, and it doesn't require things to be, installed and really built. We're really automating the process of rolling this out. And specific to IT service management, we have a few pre-built applications with reports and dashboards that can get you started even faster, looking at things that other customers have found useful and best practices in the field. So the goal of all this is that Explore Analytics can really hit those three areas of visibility that we talked about in a way that doesn't require a huge investment of time or cost to get it stood up. Part of the reason is because we connect to that data live. So when folks want that visibility quickly, it doesn't take weeks or months to deploy it. There's no integration or data modeling. We automatically discover the way your data is configured without you having to do anything. And we make it very easy for you to combine data across multiple data sources so that you can throw in data from spreadsheets or from SQL databases, from ServiceNow, and really bring it together in a way that's easy and allows you to put multiple pieces of data together. The reason is because we take a very different approach from the typical reporting, advanced reporting solutions that are out there. The typical way that you'll see the kind of old approach to reporting looks something like this. You have, some sort of data being exported from all the sources of data that you want to report against into a warehouse or into a series of spreadsheets that you can manually manipulate. And then you have a report writer who's typically trained technical person who's building a data warehouse or a data model or joining together multiple spreadsheets manually, and then publishing that reports to the managers and the stakeholders. But in this scenario, if the consumer of this report wants to see something different or see it in a different way, you might have to change the integrations that are feeding the batch jobs. You might need to change the data model. And it's something that's very brittle. It's something that requires a lot of maintenance and effort, both to create it and then to maintain it. So you don't really get that sense of end-to-end visibility because there's a lot of effort, a lot of overhead, and it's often very inflexible for the people who are consuming the reports. So our goal is, with Explore Analytics, we have this cloud solution that connects to various data sources with live queries using standard drivers. So if you're using ServiceNow, you load a report, we query ServiceNow, present that to the user immediately. We run a query to a SQL database with your, say your event management system or information from your financial system, and show that to the user live, the data that they need across any of the tables that are available to the integration, live. And you don't have to model anything. We're detecting how those data sources are built themselves. This allows you to be very agile. Setting up each one of these connections, it can be a few minutes. It's also very secure. When we run the queries to a system like ServiceNow, we run it on behalf of the user, so they're automatically being filtered based on any access control security you've implemented, based on get my tasks or get my works, the ways that you want to present only the data that's relevant to those users. Once we've connected to those different sources of data, we want to then empower every user to be able to build those reports. Making the reports easy to build and not require advanced training or SQL or coding means that you're not going to have reporting bottlenecks. You're not going to have, a queue of reports that have been requested because you're waiting for the trained users to be able to build them. Instead, it's just a few clicks away from getting that exact report. And taking that even further, the viewer, the stakeholder or manager who receives the report gets a report, similar to this example that has, drag and drop timeline scales or controls in the header, so that even as a viewer of the report, you're seeing something that's live and rich and interactive, so that the user can feel very empowered. And I'll show some of those examples in the live demo in just a few moments. And then lastly, and we're going to talk a lot about this in particular as part of today's webinar, you want to be able to drive the behavior of users, drive the decision-making of users by not only having the reports of data, but having them be rich, having them be interactive so that you can immediately take action on them, having them be very conditional and formatted in ways that drives people's attention to key information, so that you can really not only have these reports, but leverage them in a way that drives users' behavior and delivers even more value for the reports that you're creating. Because it's not enough just to be able to say that you can report on something. You need to make those reports rich and useful so that they actually have the intended effect, which is better decision-making and better effectiveness in processes. So that's the goal and the framework where we're headed. So now I'm going to walk through some examples of what I mean by that visibility and how Explore Analytics can take visibility and move it to the next level through how we do the reporting, how the reporting is live, and how it's very easy to get to the way you want to get to. So I'm going to start with a few real-world examples. The first real-world example is from, say, a change management process. You may be used to looking at upcoming changes in kind of this flat view, right? So I have this report that's showing me the number of changes, and I can see who they're assigned to, and that their currently requested approval is what we're filtered on, so that I can kind of understand this. But you really want to be able to start to take this information and present it in such a way that drives how people behave. So in this case, what I want to do is understand how soon are these changes coming up. So instead of looking at this as a list, I'm going to click to switch this to a pivot. And I'm going to sort them based on how long away the start of the change is. So I'm going to grab that start date. And I'm going to say, rather than showing it to me by year, by quarter, or by month, I'm going to group it into bins that treat the date as an age. So it's going to convert when that start date of the change is to an amount of time from now. So I'm going to say 0 to 7 days, 7 to 15 days, 15 to 30 days, and 30 to 90 days, and 90 plus. So 0 to 7. 7 to 15, 15 to 30, 30 to 90. And this can be as many buckets as you need and, to whatever intervals you want. And everyone can pick the one that's appropriate for the report they're building. But you can see here, that I have, 28 different changes that are planned for after today. And maybe I'll even show kind of what the type is and what the risk is on those changes. So you can see that all I'm doing is dragging and dropping, a few fields using a menu item, and now I can see these are all the changes that are less than 7 days away from being requested. I can then say, okay, well, actually, let me do this 0 to 2 days and then 2 to 7 days, so I can even get, more fine-grained analysis of those changes. Now, as I'm building these reports, we're running the query to ServiceNow live and presenting that data. So this is a report that's live and it's up to the minute. So every time I'm making one of those changes, I'm seeing the information that I need up to the moment. And then if I want to see what are these comprehensive high-risk changes that are happening within 2 days, the user can drill down on this cell and get to these are those individual changes against these configuration items, and I can click through and actually open up within ServiceNow the change request that's associated to that. So this becomes a live report that you may want to put on dashboards within ServiceNow or in other places to be able to give people that up-to-the-minute information, and it'll be up to that second, so it'll change as the information changes. So that's one example of, just using a couple of drag and drops and drop downs to get a better sense of visibility on this. I'll show another example, which is I want to understand some information about my P1 incidents, and I want to kind of see how P1 incidents are changing over time. So, what I might want to look at is, when were those P1 incidents created? So I'm going to look at them, say, by year and by quarter. So now I can see kind of how this trend has unfolded over time. And just by dragging the quarter into the columns, I can actually look at this year over year. So for example, Q1 of this year, we had 183 P1s, which is significantly down from last year's Q1. If I want to tease out that information a little bit further, I can do something like, for instance, saying, okay, let me also grab it by the category. And rather than just showing the numbers, I can click on this pencil icon and say display as. And what that's going to allow me to do is kind of see what was the mix of those, right? So for example, if I focus just on Q4s, right? Typically in Q4, database incident, P1 incidents are 13% of those incidents versus hardware incidents. But very immediately I can see that inquiry help is usually almost 30% of those incidents quarter over quarter. So you can see that just by displaying this in a different way, I might be surfacing information to users in a different way. Now, I can also look at this visually, right? So if I switch this to a chart, you'll see that I now have the incidents by quarter, and I'm also using that display as to do a percent difference from. So rather than showing how many P1 incidents there were quarter over quarter, now I'm looking at, were we improving or were we not improving those incidents quarter over quarter? So I can see that in Q2, we actually increased this by 54%. That's not good at all. We don't want to see a spike like that in P1 incidents. And overall, we're seeing that we're kind of bouncing more and more erratically lately. So immediately, I know that we have something that we want to look into, whereas just looking at the count might not have made this as obvious. So you want to leverage things like display as and how you're presenting the data to users to give you that additional way of showing that information. If I want to take this even further, I can switch this to a timeline and then use something that we call a scorecard just by going to File and create a scorecard view. Now you'll see that, again, we're representing the same information, but we're showing it in this scorecard. So immediately a stakeholder sees this increased by 13.54%. I'm actually going to tell the system that when things go up, that's a negative. And I'm also going to say, let's make that a triangle, right? And I can do the same with a secondary indicator, and I can say, actually put that to the left of the main indicator. So you can format these scorecards as you want and color them and really present that to the user however you want to be able to present that. And this scorecard is still live. It's still drillable where when I click, I get to this timeline view, and then I can still click to get to the details of the P1 incidents that sit behind this. So even when you're showing this very high-level aggregated view, the user is still only a couple clicks away from the actual details and the actual information that they can take action on. So this is something that's very critical for users to be able to feel they have visibility, is the fact that they can actually take action on it and make it, very rich. Those interactive controls allow you to really format and give the data in ways that are very, very aesthetically useful to the stakeholders. So for example, this is an animated project portfolio. This is a case where we're actually trending the data week over week. And the data that we're showing is the size of the bubble is the percent complete, as is the x-axis here. And then the y-axis is actually a calculation that looks at the percent complete minus the target, so that we know, are we ahead or behind of that target? And you'll see that even a calculated field like this doesn't require JavaScript or SQL or anything complex. It's really a formula builder, similar to how you might build a formula in Excel, but automated and live and directly a part of this report. You'll also notice that we have here something called an animation. We've decided to animate this by date, grouped by week. So now, if I play this animation, I can actually see how those projects move over time. You'll notice that this project immediately, was kind of falling straight down as we looked at this over time, which tells me that it's really falling behind, and I need to focus my attention on this project as opposed to this project, which seems to be really flying along, and whoever is running this project deserves a pat on the back and a thank you. But I need to be focusing my time on the collaboration suite project, which is a critical project that's now 25% behind the target. So I want to figure out why exactly that is. So you see that we're leveraging different ways of presenting the data, whether it's different types of charts, different animations and calculations, to take the same data that you might have today, but surface it in a way that's going to allow those users to feel that they have a lot more visibility. The project manager who's looking at this has more visibility into the project because we're showing them the data in a way that highlights what they're looking to find out. This becomes especially important when you're combining data in different ways and you want to bring multiple data points together. So for example, this is a report that I have that shows by the hour of the day, what was the average number of incidents that were created kind of hour by hour. So for example, at 10 o'clock in the morning, we're typically seeing, between 3 and 4 new incidents. At 9 o'clock, we're seeing, 2.7. So something that might be very useful for a service desk manager to be able to understand demand. I also have this report here that shows me live today how many incidents have been opened hour by hour. So today we saw 9 incidents opened at 7 in the morning. But the way I want to surface this to my user is using something called a mashup view. Anytime you want to combine data from multiple tables or the same table in multiple ways, you can combine these just by building those reports and mashing them up together. So I'm taking these 2 reports that we've already seen, adding as many input views as we'd like. Right now I'm just going to do 2 and I click OK. And so now I have this report that's combining together the live information of what's happening today in my environment and the overall average hour by hour. So now I can see that at 2 a.m. we had almost double the incidents that we typically see. Same again at 7 a.m. So now it's only 8 a.m., but I already know that something's been going on last night that I want to take a look into, because I can compare the live information to the historical information and get to that next level of understanding and that next level of visibility, so that I'm already in real time looking at what's going on and understanding whether that's normal or not normal. This is a very powerful report, but again, it just took some drop downs and then this mashup to create that together. Not a single line of code, not a single line of SQL, something that really any user can create. That allows you to get at information that you wouldn't be able to get in other ways. And there's really no easy way to deliver this. So another example is this is the number of opened incidents per month to give me kind of an incident volume. But then I'm also looking at the number of active employees. Maybe my organization has a lot of turnover, so that I can see, how many people are actually working at the company. So now when I create a mashup view called incident volumes, and I pull in that monthly active employees that's coming from the user table, and then the opened incidents per month. Let me actually switch that around. Right, so again, I'm just selecting from simple reports that I've already built. I'm creating this mashup. And now, as we saw before, I can use this calculation to say, well, give me a ratio of the number of incidents per the number of employees. and I'll focus so that I'm only looking at that. So now what I'm seeing is a benchmark that's a little bit more useful, which is what's the number of incidents per employee, right? So that we can see, okay, is the number of increased incidents because of something that we did to the environment, or is it something that has to do with seasonal turnover, that has to do with, business variables that are really outside of IT's control? I can only get this because I can combine data from multiple tables live and present that in this way. And then as a user, I can go a little bit further. Do I want to see this year over year? So I can compare this year over year. Do I want to see it as bars rather than as lines? The viewer who's viewing this report can do that. They can drag over a section of the timeline that they're interested in. They can see what the average or the median number was just by clicking onto those. I can have it highlight the values for me. So again, I have this unprecedented visibility through the report that's been built for me, and then I can take it further with these interactive controls that you see in the blue header here. Now, what's great about this visibility is when I'm mashing up, I can actually mash up from multiple data sources. So I'm going to add an additional input view, which is my calls per month. And you'll notice that this is actually coming from another data source. It's a SQL data source called Explore that's showing my call volumes. So this might be showing me information from, a call system. And let me merge the y-axes so that we can compare apples to apples. So I can pull together in real time from multiple data sources without copying data out of ServiceNow, without copying SQL data into ServiceNow. I can really see it live and all in one place in a way that's very easy to deliver. This is very critical because, IT organizations really have a lot of different systems and a lot of different sources of information. And so when you want to start to answer the questions that really matter to the business, you're going to want to pull this together. So for example, one of our customers is a retail food chain. So they have a number of different cafes. Their reporting to their business is how many incidents were there per cafe. And for each of those different cafes, was that something that was impacted by recent changes or recent releases? So they wound up pulling together information from 7 different systems that were a variety of different call systems and incident systems and event systems to be able to understand the full perspective of how are we impacting our retail cafes without having to copy all those systems together. They were able to get that within a couple weeks of deploying Explore Analytics, which was really exciting to be able to see. And before, all of that was done manually in spreadsheets. So now, the last point that I wanted to make in terms of these reports is showing information in terminology that's relevant. For ServiceNow, we've added a particular piece of functionality that's called business service reporting. So I right now have these outages that are grouped by the configuration item. So this is how many incidents were against individual machines. That's not very useful to our management or to our stakeholders because they don't understand what these individual machines are. So all I have to do is click here and say, roll this up to the top level business service or a business service that meets particular conditions. Or I could even say, actually roll it up to the application table or to some other table. Right now, I'm just going to roll it up to the top level business service and click OK. So now, rather than showing me the number of outages by individual configuration item, it's going to roll those upstream to be able to say, okay, which upstream business services, based on the relationships I have in my CMDB, are those impacting? And now we're talking the language of our stakeholders. The IT service has had 2 days of degraded service, 2 days of outages, and 1 day of planned outage. So now we're speaking the language that business stakeholders need because you can relabel things, you can combine things together, you can roll up to parent business services. It gives you a lot more flexibility to present those reports in the way that people are interested in seeing them. So we've covered a lot of the types of reports that you can build and how the live connections gives you better visibility and the interactive controls give you better visibility. Now, just to briefly talk about how these stakeholders will actually interact with the data, because it's very key for it to be in a way that's consumable for those users to be able to interact with. So we have the ability within Explore Analytics to assemble these reports together in dashboards that have kind of multi-level filterable. So now if I want to say, well, show me these reports I'm looking at just for the hardware team, and within the hardware team, show it to me for Alex Lindy, right? Just by giving those kind of quick drop downs and ways of assembling this together, now users have, again, that same ability to then be able to drill through to the details and open up the incidents and really feel that they have visibility because they can configure those reports. Now, the reality is, if for many of your users, they're not going to come into Explore Analytics to build those reports. So just by going to File and selecting Publish, I can automatically publish this dashboard so that it can be embedded in HTML. I can publish it directly to ServiceNow, and that allows it to be published in ServiceNow dashboards. So for example, if I switch over to my ServiceNow dashboard, I can publish whole Explore Analytics dashboards to ServiceNow. So this is a change trend dashboard in my environment of ServiceNow that's showing, some trending information about changes, and these interactive, timelines that I can drop by database or by Database Atlanta, or I could publish them as individual gauges. So for example, if I look at my group managers overview, right, this is here, and I can click Add Content, and I can add any of the Explore Analytics reports that have been published to this dashboard. One thing you should notice about this dashboard is that I'm logged into Explore Analytics through ServiceNow, so it's running these reports not only live, but on behalf of the user that's logged in. So when it says My Team's Task Load, it's actually automatically filtering on any user where I'm listed as their manager. So I can see for the people who I manage, this is how many tasks they have. This is how many tasks are 75% of the target. This is the work that they've completed week over week, so I can see kind of what people are working on. I can see, looking at specific questions in the survey, how are my different team members doing, performing at delivering quality to those users. I can see, with a target line, how they're doing at delivering on SLAs week over week. So again, I'm giving that user not only visibility, but actionable interactive visibility. Now, if you don't want to put this through ServiceNow for a different group, you can also embed it anywhere that HTML is. So we have customers that are using SharePoint. We have customers that are using Google Sites. We have customers that are using, custom HTML portals, intranet portals. And it's still live and it's still interactive. So this is an example of that business service dashboard that's showing, for the business services where I'm listed as the owner, show me the current outages for my services, show me, the location worldwide of those incidents. And again, it's seamless to me where exactly these reports are coming from, but I can get the information that's relevant to me where I need it to be gotten. So as you can see, we've touched on a number of different topics, but I wanted to kind of bring it back to this idea of visibility, that by connecting to the data live and making it so easy to build these reports, your users will get the visibility because they can see that information at the time that they need it and in the format that they're interested in seeing it. And they'll be empowered to drill through to the data, to make their own configuration changes to the report, to group it by different assignment groups or see it week over week, and be able to format it in the way they're interested in seeing it. And then they can actually have reports that drive them to take action, that improve things. One of our customers had a delinquent tasks report that was, who had the most tasks that hadn't been actioned within 30 days. Within a couple months of publishing it to their ServiceNow dashboard, they saw a 30% reduction in those tasks. And that's a huge change in a Fortune 50, global manufacturing company to be able to, roll that out quickly and see those results immediately. So I'm going to open this up for questions. If you have any questions, if you can use the chat within the WebEx to be able to ask us, I'm happy to answer kind of any questions that you have about the visibility that we've discussed today. Great. So a question about kind of how easy this is to set up and kind of what data sources we can set up against. So if I go to data and say add a new data source, we connect to all of the common relational databases like MySQL, Oracle, DB2, PostgreSQL, SQL Server, those kinds of databases, as well as being able to connect live to ServiceNow. So for example, the ServiceNow integration, if I select ServiceNow and click OK, all you're doing is applying an update set that's been certified from the Berlin release all the way up through Helsinki. You provide the user information, that's the service account that we'll connect through. And as soon as you've filled in this form, we're going to detect your tables, your custom fields, anything that's specific to how you've configured the environment, and then the users will be able to run reports against it. So you don't have to manually map data or tell us where to go find that report. It's the same for if I want to add, say, a new Oracle data source. We leverage an agent that's a light job application that allows us to connect securely without you opening up the firewall. And then again, you tell us, where's the Oracle and what user credentials we can use to connect to it, and we will discover what's available in your Oracle data source. It's a great question. Another question is, how do we handle this reports without putting too much load on ServiceNow? So as we mentioned, when you load this report, we issue a query to ServiceNow and get the response. We're going through ServiceNow's supported Glide APIs. So we're running a query, making a SOAP call to ServiceNow and asking ServiceNow to do the querying and aggregation. There's a couple aspects of that. One is it will perform very similar to running a report natively on the platform because we're using exactly the same APIs and exactly the same method as when ServiceNow runs reports on itself. The second is you can, both on the Explore Analytics side and the ServiceNow side, control how many concurrent queries we make. So for example, if 100,000 people loaded 100,000 reports simultaneously, we wouldn't flood ServiceNow's database. Instead, some of those reports would take slightly longer to load for the user than others. And we have customers that are doing global implementations on some of ServiceNow's largest ServiceNow environment with live reports, across hundreds of users worldwide, and we've been very happy with the performance that they've seen. So we've really been at pains to optimize it. Now, one of the things that you can do is, we have that ability to do reporting live, but we also have the ability to snapshot data on a regular basis. So for example, if you remember this upcoming changes report, if I want to trend over time how this, see how many of those upcoming changes there were, I just go to say File and say Track Trend, and that'll create a table within Explore Analytics that saves the results of this report on a schedule. So we give you the flexibility to decide, do you want a live report or do you want a trended report that doesn't put load on ServiceNow data? Do you want a frozen report that kind of saves the results of the report if you're emailing it to a manager? But with all of these different tools, our customers have been able to implement Explore Analytics without any impact to ServiceNow. Another question was whether the presentation slides would be available. If you'd like a copy of those slides, you can shoot me an email, and I'm happy to share that deck. And there will be also a recording available of this presentation for folks who want it. Another question is where can you find out more? From exploreanalytics.com, you can find links to our wiki, which is all of our product documentation. So if you want to get further into the details of, how we connect to Oracle, or how we connect to ServiceNow, or, how the configuration, how the configurations change, etc. The wiki will have a lot of information. Also, we have video tutorials that can tell you more. But in my experience, the best way that you can find out is at my.exploreanalytics.com/registration. I will send this link out to the attendees. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial. So it's fully featured. You can, connect it to your ServiceNow dev environment or to your Sandbox SQL environment and really see for yourself how those reports run. And of course, you can respond to the invitation to this webinar or reach out to us through the website. I would be happy to help walk you through building any of your reports in Explore Analytics. So you can get kind of hands-on help. Happy to, do deeper dive demonstrations for your organization. Another question that came up is specifically in regards to ServiceNow. How does the reporting functionality compare with Helsinki and with other releases? We're still seeing lots of areas of reporting that ServiceNow, even in their latest releases, have not yet addressed. There doesn't appear to be, from a ServiceNow perspective, a way to do this business service roll-up. We also do ServiceNow, for those of you who are familiar with the catalog variables, being able to actually report based on variables in the service catalog. ServiceNow has some incomplete support. It doesn't include variables in a variable set. We're able to do that. And of course, being able to connect to data sources that are outside of ServiceNow, being able to easily combine live reports of data across multiple tables are still a functionality that ServiceNow doesn't have natively in the platform or with any of their other reporting offerings. So we're still seeing a lot of areas that ServiceNow doesn't address. And of course, as I mentioned, the ability to pull in data live from other data sources as well. So we're reaching the end of the webinar time slot. So thank you again for your attentiveness and for attending this morning. If you have further questions, please feel free to reach out to me or to Explore Analytics through the website. And again, I highly recommend that 30-day free trial. And I'm looking forward to helping your organization get the visibility that it's looking for.